On the Wednesday before Tuesday's budget next week, I could not think of a more important thing for this House to be talking about. To be talking about the impact of decisions of 10 years of Labor. To be talking about the impact of a Labor government in this state after 10 years. On the eve of the 2014 state election, on the steps of this very House, Speaker, the then Premier, the then Leader of the Opposition, soon-to-be Premier, pledged on Channel 7 News that there would be no new taxes under a Labor government. A decade on, Speaker, there are 53, almost 54 new taxes or increased taxes at the hands of this Labor government. Every one of those taxes, new or increased taxes, making life harder, making life more difficult for Victorians at a time when they can least afford it. In the middle of a cost of living crisis, where education costs are going up, grocery costs are going up, energy bills are going up, where the cost of living is going through the roof, where Victorian households are doing everything they can to try and make ends meet, pushing and pulling and stretching and sitting down at the kitchen table at the end of a busy day, having put their kids to sleep, trying to figure out how they're going to pay the mortgage with increased interest rates, figuring out how they're going to pay the school fees, with Victoria being the highest state in the nation to send your kid to a state school, figuring out how they're going to pay the grocery bills, how they're going to make ends meet. This is what is on the mind of Victorians, Speaker, and it's not being helped by an Andrews, now Allan Labor government, who say they care but who just really don't. And earlier this week, just yesterday, on the front page of that august publication, The Age newspaper, we learn of the government's intention to introduce their 54th new or increased tax. That's right, Labor's home ownership tax.
Another one.
An expansion of the growth area infrastructure contribution. We know that their gate has been sitting there, about $500 million sitting there, propping up the bottom line of Labor's budget for many, many years now, not being used for its purpose, not being used for its sole purpose to actually deliver the infrastructure in growth suburbs. And lo and behold, moments before the budget, days before the budget, what do? They make an announcement of where the gate is going to be spent, and I was very interested, Speaker, to see that about $100 million of that $500 million will be spent in the seat of Werribee.
Oh, no. Oh, no. Why? Why would they do that now?
An equivalent gate, Speaker, applied to developments right across this state doesn't just limit this growth area infrastructure fund, Labor's tax, to growth areas, but it will expand it to every local government area. And the impact of that will be this. If you tax housing more, housing will get more expensive.
No, it won't.
Housing will get more
Surely
expensive. This cost will not be absorbed by developers. This cost will not be absorbed by builders. This cost will be passed on to Victoria's most vulnerable at a time when they can least afford it. You know, those people, those Victorians who all they want, all they yearn for is a roof over their head. All they want is the security, the protection, the stability of a home, of four walls and a roof and a floor from which they can then contribute to their community, from which they can then provide for themselves and provide for their families. And what is Labor doing? What is this government doing? The same thing they've done for the last 10 years, and putting the interests of Victorians last. They don't care for one little bit whether Victorians have got a roof over their head, whether they've got the stability of a home. And you know why I know that, Speaker? Because if they did care about that, their actions would speak louder than their words, and all we've got from Labor up until this point are empty words, empty promises. They don't really care. If they did, there'd be more than announcements, it'd be more than photo ops, it'd be actual delivery. They've had 10 years to do it, and Victorians are worse off after 10 years of Labor. This government has pledged for the last decade to keep energy prices going down, down, down. And we know on this side of the House, because we, unlike the Minister for Small Business, which was very apparent during question time today, actually speak to small businesses in our community and around the state, that energy prices have in fact gone up, up. And of course they have, because this government, for pure ideological reasons, want to ban gas.
Yes.
I've said it before in this place, I'll say it again. If the legacy of this government is to ban gas, is to ban the Bunnings barbecue, is to ban the wok, then, my goodness, I don't want to have any association with them whatsoever. That's not just un-Victorian, that is un-Australian for them to be doing that. It is an absolute furphy to say that we're going to bring energy prices down, 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 whilst banning gas. It is an important part of our energy mix, and at least on this side, we understand that. We understand that because as recently as 2 weeks ago, I was in the electorate of Bentley. Don't go too far, member for Bentley. I've got a story for you. I was in the electorate of Bentley with my upper house colleague, Georgie Crozier, the upper house member for that region. And we were meeting with local businesses in the Bentley electorate who were telling us...
Have they ever met the member?
Who were telling us that because of the taxes and the tax increases in Labor's last budget, their rent tax, their jobs tax, their ideological drive to push up energy prices, that those businesses, those small businesses in the Bentley electorate, are finding it harder to make ends meet. They're having to cut staff. They're having to work longer hours. They're having to work harder than they've ever had to work before, only in a cost of living crisis with no support from the Allan Labor government. But this trip, member for Bentley, didn't just end in Bentley. I was also in Hastings with my upper house colleague there, and in Ballarat as well. And guess what? Every small business owner that I spoke to, every small business owner that we spoke to, had a similar story of woe, had a similar story of doing everything, absolutely everything that they could, not just to keep their business afloat and alive, they still, after Labor has taxed them to the absolute hilt, have an aspiration to grow their business, to give more Victorians, more people, more residents in Ballarat, in Bentley, in Hastings, the opportunity to know and truly understand the dignity of work by giving them a wage, by putting independence, by putting cash in their pockets so they can provide for themselves, their families, to pay their education bills, to pay their mortgages. But no, they can't do that at the moment because of the economic conditions, because of the circumstance, the policy settings of this Labor government that simply punish Victorians instead of support Victorians who want to put their hand in their own pocket and give things a go. That is the Labor way after 10 years of Labor. You look at health. Health is an absolute basket case after 10 years of Labor, and we know it. We know it because we see the pictures on the TV news and in the newspapers most days of the week. Ambulances ran right around this state. The story the other day on 3AW of a young boy waiting some 45 minutes for an ambulance to arrive. 3 hours, member for South West Coast, for an ambulance to arrive, and then his parents then had to take him to hospital. He now has some ongoing permanent injuries, which his parents are trying their best to... Now, Speaker, the point is this. Debt has consequences. Economic irresponsibility, economic recklessness has consequences. Yes. And here is the great tragedy of that, Speaker. The people who are on the receiving end of those consequences aren't the executive here. No. They are not ministers here. They're not even, the mid-tier parliamentary secretaries or the backbenchers. No.
There's no mid-tier.
No, mid-tier. No, they are Victorians. And often they are vulnerable Victorians who are in need of a service provided by the state government, whether it be in education, health, community services, police and community safety, that in ordinary times, under good economic management and good and responsible economic management, those services would be provided to help vulnerable Victorians in a timely way, but that is a near impossibility because of the way that this government has managed things, has mismanaged things in the last decade. Now, we hear that education standards are going up.
Oh, no.
But again, I would believe the Shadow Minister for Education, the member for Kew, any day of the week over this government, and she will tell you, Deputy Speaker, that education standards in this state are in fact going down, down, down. Not just standards, but also outcomes. Not just standards, but also outcomes. Housing in Victoria is an absolute mess. Some of those 53 new or increased taxes, around 50% of those new or increased taxes are on housing. This is the inclination of this government to make life more difficult for Victorians. We set all of that aside. Let's talk about debt. Let's talk about interest payments. Debt is on track. To be $177 billion at the end of the current forward estimates. That's more debt than Queensland, New South Wales and Tasmania combined. As of today, Speaker, we're paying $15 million each and every day just to service that debt. If our debt stays at $177 billion after next Tuesday's budget, and I won't because the trend line is heading towards $200 billion, we will be paying more and more daily interest. Now, if it's $177 billion, that means we're paying $24 million in interest a day. $24 million of interest. A day. That's a new primary school in my community. That's a new primary school in the member for Croydon's electorate, and in the member for Kew's electorate, and the member for Gippsland South's electorate, and in the member for Caulfield's electorate, and the member for Narracann's electorate. This is the cost of Labor's economic recklessness. Because of the way that they have mismanaged this economy, we have less opportunity to deliver the services and the infrastructure that our communities rely upon. Whether it's schools, whether it's teachers in schools, and at the start of this school year we were 1,500 teachers short. 1,500 teachers short. Imagine if the economy here in Victoria was better managed. Imagine having the ability to do more, to get more teachers in classrooms at the start of the school year. But no, at the start of the school year, debt has consequences. Imagine having the money in the bank to be able to provide the nurses in hospitals, to be able to provide the ambulances for paramedics and to increase paramedics in this state. Imagine having the money in the bank to be able to get more police on the beat to keep our community safe. Imagine the missed opportunity at the hands of the Allan Labor government. Speaker, next week, we know this week, next week, that this Labor government will deliver a budget that will continue to punish Victorians, that will continue to make life harder for Victorians, that will continue to make Victorians responsible for the economic mismanagement and the economic recklessness of decisions made by this government. And I think that is deeply, deeply, deeply unfair, but that is the state of play here in Victoria. My plea to Victorians, Speaker, is this. I ask them, Speaker, after 10 years of Labor government, do Victorians feel safer, Speaker? Nope. Do Victorians feel like they are living a better, healthier life? I wouldn't say so. Do they feel like life is getting easier? No. And my final question to Victorians is, do they feel like they can trust the Allan Labor government to deliver what they need at this time? And the people that I'm talking to right around the state, whether it be small businesses, whether it be families, whether it be singles, whether it be older Victorians, are telling me time and time again that this government cannot be trusted. Every member of the government, especially those members in marginal seats on Labor's backbench, should understand, Speaker, that the message that Labor is not delivering for Victoria is resonating with the Victorian people. It is absolutely resonating with the Victorian people. And those members of the Labor caucus in marginal Labor-held seats really, really need to start doing everything they can within their own caucus to advocate for a better and a fairer go for the people that they say they represent in this place. After a decade of Labor, the last thing that Victorians, especially vulnerable Victorians, need is a Labor backbench full of passengers just enabling the Labor ministers to run the show, to allow a kitchen cabinet to run the show and to make life harder for Victorians at a time when they can least afford it. Speaker, In closing, after 10 years of Labor, Victorians are worse off. My invitation to Victorian Labor in next Tuesday's